Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Welcome, everyone, to the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me. Make sure that you follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, make sure to visit the PAS Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends. I got a great guest for today. I have Steve Gillan here. He's talking about the Common Sense Contract with New York. It's a movement that he started, and I want to talk to him more about it. So, Steve, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Nick.
Well, I'm glad you could join me. So let the audience know, what is this Common Sense Contract with New York? Explain it to the audience so that they could understand. And when we look at New York State, how dire of a situation are we in?
We're in a terrible situation in New York. It's so bad, and it's only getting worse. And the reason is we have no control of the legislature. We have a single party rule, and we've seen what that has done for us for the past 5 years. There's no opposition. So what the Common Sense Contract with New York is, I fashioned it after the 1994 Newt Gingrich contract with America. And basically what he did is put together pledges that all the congressional candidates throughout the whole country, he nationalized the platform. And what it was so successful that they flipped 54 seats in the House and 9 seats in the Senate. And it was the first time that the Republicans had controlled the House in 40 years. So it's a successful strategy. There's no question about it. So what we did with the Common Sense Contract with New York, I fashioned it after that and said, why can't that work in New York? Why can't we give voters a reason to come out and vote? You know, we look at the poll, not the polling numbers, but the voter numbers from 2020. You had a little over 8 million people come out and vote. However, in 2022, which was a major election for us, that was for New York State governor and trying to turn the one-party rule in Albany, we only had 5.6 million people come out. So that was 2.5 million people that made a conscious decision not to come out and vote in 22, that came out in 20. I contend the reason is, number one, after 20, we look at the loss and people were discouraged. In 22, they didn't have a message. Okay, there was no consistent message with the opposition that what they would do if you come out and vote for them. So like in 1994, we put the pledge together and I established 7 pledges, okay? Now, these will be pledges that we're asking candidates running for the Senate and the Assembly to commit to the voter that they will address these issues if you come out and get your family to come out, your friends to come out and vote for them and give them something solid that they could look at. So the 7 pledges I came up with were basically, I got them from exit polling, and it was my initial look at what are the important issues. And then we went out and we focus grouped them. So, you know, if anybody that's familiar with a focus group, if you have 20 people in a focus group, that is considered valuable information on what the people want. We did 292 people through April and May and beginning of June to make sure that the 7 pledges that we have was something that the average person, the average New Yorker, regardless of party, that these things were impacting their lives and that they would come out and vote for a candidate that put down in writing and sign the Common Sense Contract with New York, that they would come out and vote. And we feel that that can happen here, in New York. So basically the 7 pledges are, the first one is about immigration. And it's to repeal all immigration laws that make us a sanctuary state and make it illegal for any city that declares itself a sanctuary city to receive any funding from the state. And also because you have $2.3 billion in this year's budget for, illegal immigrants, when we have people living on the streets ourselves for years, but we have money for that. The second pledge is crime and law and order. And what that would be that the candidate, pledges to submit legislation, either sponsor or co-sponsor a bill repealing all pro-criminal laws and hold DAs responsible for not following the law, regardless of the party. And then the third one is parental rights. We know we have on the back of the ballot this year, you'll have the ERA amendment that they're trying to push through. That will take away all parents' rights, for their children, where they could come in, and if child wants puberty blockers or, any sort of transgender change surgery, that if the parents object to it, they could come in and take your child. Now that's on the ballot this year. Then the fourth one is voter integrity. 88% of the American people want voter ID, and so do New Yorkers. So there's legislation that's been there since last year, and it hasn't even made it out of the election law committee at the assembly. Also, we need to have the voter rolls. We need a full audit of the voter rolls. They're a mess. There's no question about it. The proof is there that there's no control over it. So we need that audit. And then the fifth one is the budget, $237 billion, $10 billion more than last year. Where's that money going? We need an opposition party in there in those negotiations to start cutting that back. And then we go to the sixth one. The sixth one is medical mandates. We cannot again let happen to us what happened during COVID, the lockdowns, and all with unsupported science. But yet it happened, and people lost, thousands and thousands of people lost their jobs. Again, we need an opposition party up there to work on that. And then the last one, pledge number 7, is to utilize the natural resources we have here in New York State. We can create, according to the Economic Council, we could create 24,000 jobs, high-paying jobs, if we are allowed fracking. Now, we have more natural gas in New York State than Saudi Arabia, but yet we're not allowed to touch it. That would bring in billions of dollars in revenue to the state, which in turn, maybe they'd lower our taxes a little bit. So those are the 7 pledges, and we ask candidates to sign on to it and commit to the voter. And we feel that if they do that, like in 1994, that we can make a change in the makeup in the legislature in Albany.
Yeah, I mean, not for nothing. It's not rocket science, right? I mean, you titled it Common Sense. What happened to common sense in this country? Because when you look at the pledges that you make, it's not really a Democrat or Republican issue. It's just strictly common sense that we shouldn't be spending billions upon billions of dollars on people from foreign countries that are here illegally, as opposed to the American citizens, the taxpayers, or any American that's suffering and struggling, right? I mean, these are all common sense things. So what happened to common sense?
It disappeared. And that's why when we did our focus groups, and again, that's a large number, 292 people, but it wasn't all Republicans. It was weighted Republicans, 69%, but 31% were either independents, Democrats, or non-affiliated. Because again, like you just stated, these are common sense issues and common sense solutions to address these issues. But we have to get people up in Albany to make these changes happen.
Steve, we need to take a quick break, but when we get back, I want to see how the message has been received by elected officials. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So, Steve, how has the message been received by the elected officials?
A lot of them are signing on, and a lot of them are concerned about what the party will say. All right. So, see, we're not endorsing the candidates. Project Civica, that's, our main organization. We're not endorsing them. They're signing on to the contract and pledging to the people. We're a nonprofit, a 501c4, nonprofit, fully volunteer grassroots organization. So we feel strongly that us voters and citizens have a right to tell our elected officials what is impacting our lives dramatically at this moment, not down the road, at this moment. And we feel that these pledges are something that will help. Now, we feel strongly that any candidate that signs on Project Civica and the whole common sense contract, we're giving them all sorts of tools. So we printed the seven pledges. We got it on a very nice sheet. But what I did is there's so many constituencies out there that aren't touched. So I had it translated into 8 different languages. I went through the demographics of New York and I picked out what are the most significant, groups out there that nobody ever touches. So we're giving the candidates the tools that they need to go out to these communities and give them the respect and print it out in their language. What Project Civica will do then at that point is that people that sign on, we will be advertising the 7 pledges of the contract in those people's specific languages in their community newspapers. And we feel that that's a whole group, a whole constituency that has never been even asked. We are giving them, the tools, the candidate, the tools to show these people that I'm running in your area. I will be your state senator or assemblyman, and I care what you think. And I have enough respect for you to print it out in your own language. So we're giving them the tools. We'll also be having a video that's, we're sending out that, I think you have a copy of. And, that's going to give the candidates the ability to use that video and put their own, information on it and put it wherever they like. We give them access to, I created talking points for each of the 7 pledges. And these 7 pledges, I mean, there's so many problems in New York. However, trying to narrow it down, again, that's why the focus groups was done, to see what people feel is most important. But these talking points address each of the 7 pledges and then gives them the opportunity, the candidate the opportunity to go out there and justify why you have to come out and vote. We only had 49% of the electorate come out in 2022. Hochul only had 24% of the voters, and she's the governor. That's not a mandate by any stretch of the imagination. The Zeldin only, lost by, I think it was 6%. That was for turnout. That 2.45 million people that didn't come out and vote the last round. So the whole objective of the common sense contract is to give people something to come out and vote for. So that's how we're working on it.
Yeah, and when you look at voter turnout in the United States, it's abysmal at all levels of government, especially when we get down to local and state level. And you look at turnout and you look at the contract with America, it's just, again, it's common sense. Now, have any Democrat officials signed on to the common sense contract?
No, they have not.
That's a sad state of affairs.
Well, yeah, but you look at it, what's going to be their position? They're the ones that put these laws in place. And if they're, hopefully you will look at some centrists Democrats, that feel that I agree with all these issues. However, the party's not going to allow them to sign on to it.
Well, it shows how they lack courage and the frauds that they are, especially many from the downstate region, Suffolk and Nassau County, because they'll come out and they'll speak against bail reform and say they don't support it and that it needs to be reformed, yet they don't try and put pressure on the Democrat Party bosses to change their positions. They want to have their cake and eat it too by saying, well, I'm against it, even though I voted for it, and I'm not going to apply pressure to have it reformed. So it shows you the frauds there. You brought up 2022, and you had a ton of people predicting this red wave that never took place. And the reason why is a lot of it has to do with messaging. Now, in the summer of 2022, Kevin McCarthy released his plan for America. Can you recall anything that was on that plan or anything it said, or even the name of the plan?
Not one. In 22, I created what was called the Republican contract with New York. And I think you were aware of it. I was on a show with you and we discussed it. And it wasn't adopted, by the Zeldin campaign or Langworthy, the Republicans in New York State. And that's because at that time, I was also in touch with, what's his name? Senator from Florida was the one that established it and put it together. But there was no consistency in it. There was nothing that was there that was solid, that was impacting the person immediate needs. When I created this, as you see with the, people can go to the Common Sense Contract with NewYork.org, and you'll see all 7 pledges are New York centric. pledges that impacting the individual. And again, you say with the name, you can't come up with the name, common sense. I mean, it's common sense. And that's why I named it that way, is because everybody has to think it just in, the average person looks at things that are going on right now in the state and say, this is ridiculous. This makes no sense. It's upside down, all the criminal bail reform and all of those things. I mean, I don't know if you're aware. So in January, Tierney, our district attorney, went up to Albany with 4 specific changes to the, bail laws. They were perfectly logical changes that would impact greatly their ability to prosecute. And like I was told by one of the assistant district attorney, you have right now, if you have anything under 8 grams of fentanyl, there's no bail. So if you have 7.9, there's no bail, and that can kill 150,000 people. So these people, these drug dealers, get out with no bail. They're out there selling on the street again and never show up to court. So Tierney went up there and took care of it. It never even made it out of committee up there. And that's something that would impact so many people here in New York, but we don't have the right legislature in it. We have to change that. And that's the concept of the common sense contract.
And it doesn't take much. It only takes people getting involved. Now, Steve, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to look at the contract with New York State, the common sense contract with New York State, and how it could be exported to other states. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So, Steve, you wrote the common sense contract with New York exclusively for New York. However, when you look at the components of the common sense contract, a lot of it can be exported to other states, including blue states, especially blue states. It fits into any state. So you can basically take the common sense contract and replicate it throughout the entire union. Can you not?
We've had 4 other states already inquire. They hear about the common sense contract and they're like, why aren't we doing this? And, whose responsibility is to do this? It should be the parties. Okay. Instead, we're a nonprofit grassroots organization that says that we have to do something, because if we do not have a major impact in Albany come this, it's irrelevant if, God hoping, we get Donald Trump to come back in, but that's not going to help us here in New York. That's going to help us with this, all these bail reforms and immigration and all those items. So we have to think about the down ballot. We have to think about Senate and the Assembly. It's huge. And we have to get any effort that we can to get people to do exactly like you said. They got to get involved. Has to be grassroots people getting involved. And that's what Project Civica is doing. I mean, we're pushing, we need poll watchers. We're working with the RNC. We've trained over 100 people already at Project Civica, and that we sent to the RNC. And we're working with another organization that's, on the other side, who feel the same way, that we need clean elections. They're doing training for us. So we're out doing that. We're doing TP, Turning Point. We're going to be doing a tour with them next week, where we're going to be training people how to use their app. So you could be calling your neighbors. You'll find out who is a low propensity voter. And you'll have that name, you'll have that address, you'll have that phone number. You could text them, you could send them a postcard. So this all has to be done from us. The only way we're going to save New York, and the country for that matter, is by grassroots efforts, because we have to overcome the issues that take place in the voting days.
Yeah, and let's face it, New York was going bonkers even prior to 2018. But the one thing that led it from completely falling off the cliff was that you did have a Republican-led Senate, where it forced the Assembly and the Cuomo administration to negotiate with the Republican-led Senate.
Correct.
Once that was gone, that's when you saw all these crazy proposals not only get introduced, but many of them actually getting passed. Now, if the common sense contract is adopted, you explain how it could save New York taxpayers an extraordinary amount of money. One of the problems that New York has is the exodus of people leaving the state, fleeing the state. And my particular concern is young people that can't even get a start in New York because it's so expensive, because property taxes are so high. So there is something really at stake to this, is there not?
If we do not make a change this round, we're in trouble. There's laws that are in place up in the assembly and the different committees and stuff that will impact us for years and years to come. Letitia James just put out a statement last week. I don't know if you saw it, where they're going to be able to have an impact over the individual county board of elections, where they're going to have to get permission from the attorney general to make changes in the process. Now, that if you look at that and figure where that could lead, where, the whole concept here is that we have a Republican and Democrat on the board of commissioners for the, board of elections. Okay. Now, if all of a sudden they have to report to Letitia James to make any changes and get that approved, that's not a democracy. That's not a republic. I mean, and that's where we're leading if, in fact, because this comes into effect on September 22nd. So it is going to impact this year's elections. And there's nothing we could do about it because the Assembly and the Senate passed it and it was signed. And, in last March, it was signed. So, we have to get young people out. Like you're saying, they have no chance. I have young kids. I got a 23-year-old at home. He's not going to be able to buy a house or anything of that nature on Long Island. So if we don't change this, we're going to lose it. What did we lose? 163,000 people moved out in 2023 from New York, and I'm sure most of them are more on a conservative bent because they're like, this is crazy. What are we going to do about this? So we have to do everything we can between now and November 5th to try to have a major impact, especially on our state races.
Well, that's a good point. And if you look at the amount of people that have left the state since 2020, it's the exact margin that Zeldin lost by. If you look at how many people have left New York State since 2010, it's well over 1.2 million people have fled this state, and there's a reason for that. So, Steve, how can everyone find you?
You can go to commonsensecontractwithnewyork.org. Okay, and there you'll see the full contract. You'll see the candidates that have signed on. You'll be able to read, and as soon as you go on and go to the About page, you'll read what the whole concept is of the common sense contract. And then if you're a candidate, there's a tab there that you click to go candidate submission. And, you fill out a little bit of information, and then you'll be on the website where people will see you that you're a candidate. And then we're also looking for endorsements from some big organizations. And there's an endorsement page and an endorsement submission page. So we're making it as easy as possible. And what happens if a candidate does sign on, we then send them an email and we give them a resource page with all the tools that they need to help them in their campaign.
And is there a contact page where if someone from another state wants to get in touch with you to try and incorporate some elements of this in their state, is there a way to do that?
Yes, that's right on that page, and it's the info page, or they can go to projectcivica.org, and you can see all of our initiatives. The common sense contracts one, the training for poll watchers is one training. We were doing registration drives. Now we're doing this big tour with Turning Point. So we have a lot going on, and we're all volunteers. Nobody's paid here, but we have to do it. We have no choice but to do it.
Well, we're going to have links up at the P.A.S. Report website, so everyone check out PASreport.com. You'll be able to get in touch with Steve from there. Steve, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.